Welcome. I'm your host, Dustin, and today joining us is the founder of the genre production house Paper Street Pictures. For some reason, I always want to say Paper Street Studios, and I don't know why.
Hmm.
But Paper Street Pictures, we have Aaron Koontz, and we're here to talk about the highly anticipated Care Package 2, the Rad Chad's Revenge, and also one of my favorite movies of the year. Actually, it is my favorite movie of the year, Revealer. That movie kicks ass. So we're here with Aaron, and we're gonna dive into all that stuff. So how you doing, Aaron? I know it's been a lot of back and forth. You know, we were just talking before we started of you traveling and whatnot, and getting sick, like everybody else in the world right now. So how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm so glad to finally be here, and thank you so much for having me. And yeah, it's been a crazy journey. We've made a lot of movies and have been traveling, like you mentioned, for festivals and get to see. It's amazing to get to see some of these movies with a crowd again. And that's something that's because the first Care Package we had a little bit. We had a small festival release, but like the Pale Door that I made after that, I've still never seen that in a theater with the crowd. So now that this opportunity was here, I was going to take advantage of it. So I've kind of been, all over literally the world. I was in Brussels, London, just got back from Columbus, Ohio, Telluride, Colorado, like, so all these different places. And it's been great to travel with it and watch it.
Well, that's awesome. You know, being able to travel around with essentially you're a baby because Scare Package. You directed a couple segments on there, and obviously producing it and whatnot, and the movie blew up, especially as soon as it went on to Shutter. Like, it blew up, and having Joe Bob on it, and also him doing an episode on it in the last drive-in, and just seeing all like the fans come up for it. And I love Scare Package. I think it's great, but just how you take all the tropes and you just kind of throw it in a blender, and then here you go, this is what you get with a whole bunch of different segments. It's awesome. So I'm super excited for Scare Package 2, like super excited. But yeah, it's awesome to know that you're able to go out there and travel and see all the fan reactions and whatnot with these films. And I wish I could have attended a couple of them, but that's the one thing that sucks, is being busy all the times that you're not able to be like, I gotta drop all of this to go and see that. So I'm
Yeah.
patiently waiting for it to be released.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, and thank you so much for those kind words too. Like, I think when we made Scare Package, I had no idea like if this was going to be anything for anyone. I mean, it really that movie came out of frustration, right? It was me in the industry, made my first feature, had a really, really difficult time making that, and without going into all those details, it didn't turn out the way I wanted. And then also, I never even got to release my cut of the film. Like it's just never been public. So that was very frustrating. And it was a bigger movie. We released that with NBC Universal and everything. But coming into Scare Package, that was when I was like, okay, look, let's just kind of clean the slate. Let's work with our friends. Let's raise the money ourselves. We don't have to answer to anyone. And whatever wild, stupid ideas I have, if I think they're funny, we're gonna do it. And I'm gonna push the filmmakers who are like, should we do this? Is this going too far? And I'm like, no, go further,
Yeah.
go further. And it just because I didn't have to answer to anyone, and I was like, if this really, if a dozen people end up liking it, then I will, feel like I've accomplished something amazing. And then the film, people have tattoos, they're dressed up in Halloween as Rad Chad and these things, and it's like, oh my God, like what has happened, and that's been this wonderful thing. It really reinvigorated, everything about my love for the film industry and horror films and what I was trying to do and what I was trying to make, and seeing that impact. So now, to get to make a sequel to it, yeah, I mean, especially it's one thing too, like make a sequel to any movie, like that's really special.
Yeah.
But we're making a sequel to a horror film about horror tropes. So
Yeah.
what better thing to do than to dive into the horror sequel? I mean, that's where my first exposure to Friday the 13th, and was not the first Friday the 13th. I think I want to say it was the fourth one,
Oh,
right?
okay.
And then I think maybe even New Blood immediately after that. It was like the timing, so those films got me in. I had no idea that Jason wasn't the first killer. I didn't know any of this stuff. Like So the sequels are what pulled me into this horror genre in so many ways. So to be able, and they also just go so crazy. Like, I mean,
Yep.
there's just no rules in a horror sequel. You know, Jamie Lee Curtis can cut off Michael Myers' head in H2O and he could show up in another movie,
Yep.
right? I mean, you can even make a sequel to a sequel and just ignore another sequel. And I'm
Yeah,
like, wait,
and
what?
that's
Like, what
happening
is,
a lot.
and we were even joking about, like, if we were lucky to make a Scare Package 3, if we just act like Scare Package 2 just didn't exist.
I
Even though
say
we love
do it
Scare
without
Package
even
2,
like seeing the film. I say just do it. I mean,
it's just fun. It would be like a fun idea because it's like, wait, what? What does this have to do? We're like, oh no, we're that's not canon anymore. We're just doing this now. Because we had it, I mean, and I love Scare Package 2. It's that people do that because they don't like some of those movies, but to me, like, if you're going to comment on it, I just think it'd be a fun idea. It probably won't end up happening because we have some, you know, some things I really would love to do with the third one if we're lucky enough to do it. But yeah, you know, I think it just gives you this open sandbox to do anything, and that is a very liberating, and they've given power to us in such a silly way to kind of go dumber, crazier, bloodier, and that's what it's all about for us.
yeah, and I mean that's what I'm all for. I love watching movies go super crazy. I mean, look at like Terrifier 2 and how freaking crazy that movie went and how it's still going, and the buzz around that. Just seeing that there really is no limits right now, especially in the horror genre. If you're independent, um, seems like there is no limits. You can go as far as you want, and the fans will eat it up. They will eat it up, and that's what I absolutely love about horror, is how supportive the whole community is, and not just like fans, but also like all different companies that are handshaking everybody, and all the actors and directors, like they're all handshaking. Everybody's working on other people's films, and everybody's like one gigantic family. I feel like if this was maybe like 20-25 years ago, it wasn't like that. I feel like everybody was like trying to just be better, which I think we still have that mentality, right? Where everybody's trying to be the best they can in their own way, but they're doing it with their friends. They're doing it with people who are in other movies, who are directing other movies. And that's why I love anthology movies, especially Scare Package and other ones that are like it, because there's so many handshakes going on, and then it breeds a bunch of new friendships. And then you have movies like Revealer that is pushing so many limits that, like, it has never really been done before in the terms of what the story is and just how crazy it goes. So I really have to, give props to you and putting all this stuff together, and having this awesome company, Paper Street Pictures. I think what you're doing over there is a really wonderful thing, and can't wait to see more.
Oh, thank you so much. That is so kind. I mean, yeah, like I'd mentioned, our first feature was difficult to make, and one of the things we realized when we kind of pulled back the curtain was that I think we can do this. Like, I think that, I came into the industry a little older. I had worked, in tech and in management for a while, and I was like, I know how to keep my cool. I know how to manage people. I know how to kind of work toward a goal, and we could keep our crazy ideas and greenlight stuff that people wouldn't normally see, and I think that was really exciting. So we get to kind of explore all kinds of different stuff, and make a wide variety of films that just have a different kind of vibe to them. And Revealers really credit to Luke and Sarah and Rob and like that core team and what they did, and even Michael and Tim for writing the script like
Yeah.
on short notice. They pounded that out so quickly, and that's that was created out of a need within the pandemic to be as economical as possible, but it's also forged this like wonderful friendship with Luke and I. I was just texting with him before I came on here actually, and Luke and I have another project that we're very excited to announce soon
Oh,
that
I
we're going to be
can't
doing
wait.
together. And it's just you find your kind of creative matches all the time. And I mean, even the first Scare Package we made, Emily Higgins did the first segment, Cold Open, and then we now have made a feature with Emily Higgins called Sorry About the Demon, and that's coming out early next year on Shudder.
Hell yeah.
Noah Segan, I met Noah Segan on the set of Starry Eyes, many years ago, and he's been an actor in a few of my films, including The Pale Door and Camera Obscura. And then after Scare Package, it was like, hey, let's help you get this movie made. So we helped him produce Blood Relatives, which comes out around Thanksgiving, and so it's fun to work with these filmmakers again and kind of like establish that rapport on a smaller scale on Scare Package, and then continue to make features out of that later. And I think, and as a company, and one of our mottos is actually horror with heart. It's
Oh,
this
I
idea,
like
and it
that.
doesn't necessarily mean that everything has to be, you can't have that hardcore horror, you can't have Terrifier level kills, which I admire what Damien did. I mean, the fact that he could take like 4 days to shoot that, the bed kill is just like
Oh, yeah.
rabid and amazing to me. And I think Lauren Lovera is a star now, and I think that's really exciting, and I have friends who were Terrifier is not their kind of movie, but who cares? I just care that in the horror space, this low budget movie is blowing up, and that's a wonderful thing for us.
Yep.
And I'm so excited for that, because you're right, it is a family. We're all kind of in this together, and and that's part of the, kind of the where Scare Package came out of, like people always say that something's a love letter to horror, but you can feel whether that's authentic or not.
Yeah.
You can feel whether they're punching down or if they're poking fun but kind of bear hugging it at the same time, and that's what we're trying to do. I mean, Scare Package 2 will take a lot of jabs at like the Saw sequels, for example, because I was when I was writing this, I was watching those, and if you look at the end of Saw, 3, 4, 5, 6, it's like every ending, there's like a scene with three people, and then they cut the next movie, they cut wider, and there's a fourth person.
Yeah.
The next movie they cut wider, and like, oh no, there's another twist, and they just keep retconning what you saw to make it fit a new narrative. And then like Carrie Elway shows up at one point. I'm like, what is happening? And I'm like, I don't even know what's going on. And there's a moment, without giving anything away, there is literally a moment where one of the characters at the end of Scare Package 2 is going, what is happening? And that
I
is
love that.
me watching the Saw sequels,
Yeah.
but I loved it. I still had fun watching them, and what you could do. But there's, the other component of what it is we're trying to make, especially with Scare Package 2, is we're talking about horror fandom, and I, during the time when Scare Package was released, there was, the fever pitch of this idea behind what is or is not elevated horror, and it just started to kind of bug me, the term. Like, there's no such thing as elevated drama or elevated comedy, right?
Yeah.
Like, why are we starting at a place where it needs to be elevated? And that just kind of bothered me, because, I didn't realize, as a kid, I saw The Thing, and I just like, that's a crazy movie where that dog turns into a fucking monster, and that's all I knew. But now I understand that The Thing is talking about so much more than that, and it's so deep and layered, and about identity, and just and even like race, and like, I mean, there's some
Yeah.
crazy shit going on in that movie, and it's really, really beautiful. But I didn't know that at the time. I didn't realize what was going on. I didn't realize what Texas Chainsaw Massacre was talking about, all these different things. And I think, so now it's like, wait, what are you talking about? Like, why is that the moniker that we get to add to horror? And it just kind of bugged me. So Scare Package 2 takes a lot of jabs at what that is, but it also at the same time is hopefully creating a film where a horror aficionado like yourself, I'm looking at your background that's just like filled with bullshit. I'm just like getting like, oop, I know what that is, I know what that is. And you're seeing
Thanks.
all that, and it's like, okay, can I, you're gonna connect with so many things that we have, these little lines that are gonna be funnier to you, because you know the deep cut in the horror film that we're referencing. But can it also, just on a surface level, just be fun for someone who's like maybe casually likes horror and can still enjoy
Yeah.
it? That's the line we're trying to toe, and trying to find that, where it's like a fun experience for anyone, but then the diehard horror fan, we're like winking at you and saying, this is for you, like you're in good hands. Like, it's not just referential humor, it's like taking the references and incorporating them into a story, and you realize like, oh my God, this is actually commenting on this. And I at least I hope that's how it comes across when everybody gets to finally see it. So that's just a lot of fun. God, it's so much fun to explore.
I can't wait. Just hearing that, I'm very, very excited. Do we have an official release date for Scare Package 2, or is that still to be determined?
I'll just tell you it's in December. I can't say when.
Oh, okay,
I think we're
cool.
going to announce it very, very soon. I just actually just today sent over some assets to Shutter, some promo stuff, and we're finishing up our trailer right now. So we'll get that going here very soon. But yeah, I mean, I think it's meant to be a little bit of like a scare package during Christmas kind of thing,
Oh,
gift. But
that's awesome. Early Christmas gift. I like it. Yeah, like you were saying how, a lot of his movies kind of do nods to certain films, and Care Package, like you're definitely doing that, but you are bringing it to a whole nother level, and really bringing it home to horror fans like myself who are like, oh, okay, I understand that. I understand that. So I'm very, very excited for Scare Package 2. If you're taking that like a step further, like, oh my God, like please keep doing that. Keep doing it. Even if it's not in the scare package like universe, just keep doing that, because I love seeing nods to films, and even like when some films make fun of other films for doing such things like scare package does. I'm very, very excited, and I'm sure everybody listening and watching are waiting very patiently to see this, and we'll wait until December, and very, very excited to be reviewing that when it comes out.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it's going to be, I mean, I will say, for folks coming in, I think there was an easy answer for Scare Package 2 when we were trying to decide what to do. And it was just go back to the video store and just put more tapes in. And we could
Yes.
just, and I was like, I can do that forever. Like that's an easy answer. So we took what we expected, what we thought people would expect, and we kind of flip it around. So it definitely goes in a wilder direction than I think people will expect. And it's also, if you didn't like the meta aspects in the first movie, you're going to be really frustrated in the second one, because we took the meta to to a level I've never seen before on any film, to the point where characters in the film are watching a film with you as the audience.
Oh, wow.
And it's like this because to me, like that's what I love. Like, and during the pandemic, I had a number of, just film group watch activities that we had done. And it was so much fun to kind of watch these together, and
Yeah.
especially horror films. So I was like, how can I do that in a movie? And so we do that a little bit. So you're kind of watching the movie together with characters in the movie. And then there's clues, and you're having to use that you see in the segments to like progress through the main. It's a really wild thing. And I was like, if we could pull this off, it would be something I haven't seen before. So yeah, so I'm excited, but it's still, again, it's completely in that scare package universe. It's not like so wildly different. It's just the manner in which we got there, is a little bit crazier. um but yeah, it's super exciting.
Wow, I cannot wait. I'm smiling so much just hearing that. I'm like, that's awesome. And like horror and just films in general, they're meant to be watched with, friends, or going to a theater and having that whole audience reaction together. So I like that you're trying to incorporate that into a film, because you're right. I don't think I've seen any movie that has tried to do anything like that, of having you have that experience. So I'm very excited to see how that goes. Um, so one thing I wanted to ask you regarding the first scare package with Joe Bob. How did that come about? How did you get him to be part of the film?
Yeah, so I mean, look, when I was directing my first feature, Camera Obscura, there's a picture of me on set, and I'm wearing a Joe Bob Briggs hat that I had made because I couldn't
Oh,
find
wow.
one. So I just like made one myself, and just, because I was a fan. And this is 2015, so there's no resurgence of Joe Bob or anything. I mean, I watched him growing up. I grew up in a Christian home, so I wasn't allowed to watch anything that was rated R or whatever. So, Monster Vision was kind of like my access point to a lot of stuff. And then it was one of the things I always tried to do was see it on his show and then get the unedited version, that I could watch later and see this stuff that was cut out. But so I always had this affinity for Joe Bob. And then at the end of Scare Package 1, there's this moment where I was like, there needs to be a character that's working here, and he would be like a horror aficionado. And I was like, who could that be? And the only two people that immediately came to mind were Joe Bob or Elvira. Those were the two people. And I was like, well, that's who I'd want to kind of get. And then I wanted to kind of tie into Rad Chad's, father. And I was like, this could be really fun if he thinks Joe Bob's his dad. And he's
Yeah.
like convinced of this. And I just thought that was a really fun thing to explore. So I knew I needed this aficionado, and Joe Bob was who I wanted. So I just reached out to him. You know, at some point, I think in the prior year or two, he had followed me on Twitter. And again, this is way before any of the resurgence had happened. No Shutter announcement, nothing. But I wanted him in the movie, and I remember a couple of my friends who read the script, who were younger, who were like, "I don't think I know who Joe Bob is," and I'm like, "Ah, it doesn't matter." And again, like I was saying before, that there's references in the Scare Package films that if you're a diehard horror fan, they're going to click with you.
Yeah.
But if not, if you didn't even know who Joe Bob was, you knew that the character Radchad was obsessed with someone named Joe Bob. And then he appears later and he's still obsessed with him and what that is. So it still can play. It's still funny. The delivery's funny. All of that can work. But if you know who Joe Bob Briggs is, it makes it that much more special. So that was the sweet spot we were going for, and just reached out to him. And not a lot of people were asking him to be in a lot of movies at that time. And, you know, he was very gracious and just was an absolute gem to work with. And, you know, even helped kind of rewrite some lines on set.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
him and Jeremy just had this unbelievable chemistry, and it was amazing, just amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, seeing him on screen, he just has his presence, you know, and as soon as he's there, you know that you're in for a good time. Even if you don't know who Joe Bob is, just like looking at him as a presence is a treat. Um, and it's funny that you mentioned growing up how you were like in a Christian home and you couldn't really watch a lot of things. I've kind of been making that connection a lot with like people in the horror realm. That's how a lot of people grew up. I was kind of the complete opposite. I was able to watch almost anything I wanted because I had grandparents who didn't really care.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's always crazy to see and hear that there's so many people that are like you who grew up in homes like that, and now you have embraced just what you loved, and you weren't really letting all that stuff kind of hold you back. And I have to give a hand to you for going after what you loved and not letting a lot of things hold you back. And I say that with a lot of people, especially in this day and age. You kind of have to do the things that you love. Don't let things hold you back too much. So
Oh,
awesome.
100%. Oh man, I mean that's kind of you to say. And yes, I mean you have to go for it. You know, you have to realize that, you know, and that's again, that's part of what Joe Bob's appeal is that you kind of felt like you were a reject and where there were other people that were like this, and you realize there's a lot of people like this. And that's a really special thing that I think he's curated, and the mutant family and whatever you want to call it, like I think is a very beautiful thing. And you know, yeah, my mom would not, she wasn't about it, but I remember my grandmother got HBO for free, and I would take VHS tapes and I'd bring them over to her house and I would record overnight and then swap out the tapes.
Oh,
So
hell yeah.
whatever showed up on HBO was the stuff I would watch. And that became kind of my, you know, education, you know, like unedited education into horror with Joe Bob. And those things, you know, shaped me in a way. And I think I've been chasing some of that ever since. You know, I just didn't know I could feel that way watching a movie, you know. And there's just something, you know, we've made a lot of movies now. I produced almost 20 films, and
That's crazy.
there's just something, yeah, it is. That is crazy. I admit. There is something just kind of wonderful about when you're making a horror film in particular, because you can like so for example, I made The Pale Door that I wrote and directed, co-wrote and directed, and that was really a movie about my father, my brother, some stuff, some like tough times kind of growing up in my family. But then I was also able to tell that story within Cowboys and Witches. You know, and it's like you can tell this story but also have this crazy things that happen. I think that's a really fun juxtaposition that horror offers that so many other genres don't.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm still muting the cough
Nope,
here.
you're good. Don't worry about it at all. You're good, Aaron. No worries. No worries at all.
But yeah, I mean the horror, I think there's something special about horror that it allows you to take these completely absurd things and still tell your poignant stories. And when you can do that and you can hit both, where you remove the horror elements and it's still a really compelling drama, you've got something special, you know. And I think Luke
Oh,
did a
for
great job
sure.
with that, and Revealer is a great job of that,
Yep.
you know. And we now I would say Scare Package is a little bit different because that's just like 100 miles an hour, you know. It's like a Rick and Morty episode, you know, in the way that
Yeah,
we're
that's
just
a good way to explain it.
throwing, yeah, just throwing shit at you, you know. So that's harder to do, but that's by design, you know. That's by design. But I have another movie that I'm getting ready to make. That's like a horror sports comedy
That's
thing.
interesting.
Yeah,
I'm
because I've never
excited.
seen it. Yeah, I've never
Just
seen
hearing
it
that.
before. Well, that's the idea. We made a horror western. Didn't see a lot of those. We weren't. I hadn't seen horror anthologies that were all comedic, so that's why we made that. Made our really dark, horror psychological thriller, and then we produced a lot of other movies. But I've never seen this like horror sports thing the way I wanted to see it done. So that's called Demon Derby, and that's something that we'll hopefully get to announce pretty soon too. But yeah, I mean, that's what excites me is you can just mash up all these weird ideas in the horror space, and that's something that other genres just don't have that sandbox to play in.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why horror is great. It's so diverse. And that's why there's so many conventions about it and so many crazy movies that come out with like being like mashed with other things like horror and comedy. That's always like going to be like the number one just because they're so similar. Even like dramas. I mean, you could consider a drama a horror. It's some sort of aspect depending on what the story is. But yeah, horror comedy just is always going to be, I think, the best that you can do when you want to mash something. But when you try to do horror comedy and you mash something else in there and it works, then like you're onto something. And I can see that's where you're trying to go. Is that you're trying to push these limits on certain elements of horror, and I love that. I want people to continue to push things and go as far as you possibly can. It doesn't all have to be gore and guts and everything, but just if you have a good solid storyline, which Scare Package does, and other films that you have produced and created, they all have such a good flow of things, and like how just it just ramps up after every act. Not even like after every act, like every like 10 or 15 minutes, it keeps getting crazier and crazier. Like I'm gonna reference like Revealer because that movie it starts off at almost like zero, and like you're in 5 minutes and you're already at like 80%, and then you just keep going and going and going, and it's so good. And Luke and the whole team, like they're friends of the show and pretty close to them as much as I can be as a podcast. So it's really cool to kind of see the others in there. Like Kato's going off to do so many like films now. She's starting to get a career, and Luke's out there. Now you see Michael and Tim, who is like their comic book sales are like going up now because of all the work they've been doing with Revealer. I have a bunch of Revealer stuff over here. Just don't have it up on the wall yet.
Oh, fun.
So yeah, it's such a great film, and for anybody who hasn't seen Revealer yet, I don't know what you're doing. You need to go see that right now on
Yeah, it's
Shudder.
on Shutter now, and I was so glad to get Shutter on board with that project. And actually, Shayna, who plays the co-lead on that in Revealer, because I loved her in Revealer so much, I cast her in Scare Package 2.
Oh hell
So
yes!
yeah, so she's got a fun part in the first segment of Scare Package 2 that Alexander Barretto directed, called Welcome to the '90s, and it's funny because in Revealer she's not as much comedic, but she can be. She's got her moments, but in this she's hilarious. Like we have her doing pure comedy, and she's so funny, so funny.
Hell yeah! I cannot wait for that. Um, so I wanted to ask you another thing. This is related to Shutter. So how did Shutter come to you to acquire Scare Package, or were you reaching out to them to kind of get on there, or was Joe Bob more of a push for that?
So a little bit of both. I mean, so we just I mean I knew Sam Zimmerman already because keep in mind Sam had been in the horror industry for a while, and he at one point took over for Ryan Turek, who's now at Blumhouse, had a site called Shock Till You Drop, and then that site, when Ryan left, then Sam actually briefly took over for Shock. And I think he had reviewed like a film or so of ours from back in the day. Maybe it was Starry Eyes or whatever from back in
Oh,
the day.
Starry Eyes is so good.
Oh,
Such a
thank
good
you. Yeah, I
film.
was very lucky to be on the producing team on that, and they Dennis and Kevin just killed it, and Travis. I learned so much from him, who's remained a bit of a mentor and just a wonderful human. And from there, I think so we were kind of on their radar. Like they knew about the movie. The Andejar twins, they were actually in the original Shutter Labs, which was a thing that happened in like 2017 or so. And
Oh,
they did this where they brought in some people to like develop talent for potential Shutter movies. They've since stopped doing that, but they were in that inaugural one, I believe. So there were just a number of people. Noah and Sam are good friends, so they were already. So the movie was like on their radar. But I definitely also brought it. Emily Gatto is the head of acquisitions there, and I brought it to her at the film market in I think like 2018 or so. And to her credit, she saw the potential, and this was before Joe Bob. This was still Joe Bob was not. Now that I think at that time they had said that they were doing something with Joe Bob, but they had no idea. It was the
Yeah.
plan for that was just a one night event. We're just going to see what happens, and then Joe
Yeah.
Bob broke the
Blew up.
internet, and it's history ever since. So I think if we'd waited until that had all happened, we probably could have gotten more money out of Shutter during that time. But no, it was kind of a mutual thing.
All right, cool. Yeah, I wasn't sure how that came about. So I imagine that you are probably still doing handshakes with Shutter over there, and obviously Scare Package 2 is going to be on Shutter as well. Is there any other movies that will be making it over to the platform?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look, we forged just a wonderful relationship with everyone at Shutter, and Nick Lazo, Sam, Emily, Craig, Sean. They're all just wonderful, wonderful humans. I love them to death. And yeah, we have a lot of movies with Shutter. So we had, the first was Scare Package, and then The Pale Door also played on Shutter. It's on there now. Then I sold Revealer to Shutter as well. And then now upcoming, we have Blood Relatives, which is Noah Segan's directorial debut. That is a Paper Moon with vampires kind of story, road trip, familial vampiric story, which is wonderful. And that comes out November 22nd. And then obviously Scare Package 2 comes out in December. And then in January, we have Sorry About the Demon, which was Scare Package director Emily Higgins' film that's coming out then. So, that's multiple, that's 3 films coming out in back to back to back months
That's
on
awesome.
Shutter alone, So they're definitely, we talk about all the time. It's the Shutter family at this point, like I love making movies with them. I'm going to continue making movies with them. And we're talking about other projects right now, multiple other projects right now. So I don't see that going away anytime soon. They're the best. They're great in the space, and that's going to continue. And then I am also excited about Screenbox and what they're doing now too. And I have some friends over there too. I've known Brad Miska for a hot minute, and Brandon Hill is a good friend of mine. We have a production company called Blood Oath, where we do horror consulting for people. And Brandon, they just bought Terrifier 2, obviously, and they have some cool stuff like Freddy's Nightmares,
Oh
that
yeah.
they brought back, and then they've got All Jacked Up and Full of Worms, which is a great movie that's coming to their
That's
platform.
a batshit movie. That's all I'm
Yeah,
saying.
it's wild, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's wild. But that's credit to them, for trying to get some risky stuff,
Yeah.
and they don't have the biggest titles like Shutter does yet, but they're smart people and they're curating, and I think they're gonna be in the space for a long while too. So I've got something I'm setting up with them too, so we'll do a project there as well.
Oh, I'm
But
excited.
yeah, I mean, it's really in the end, I just want to work with good people. That's why I want to continue working with Luke. After Revealer, it's why we worked with Emily Higgins again. And these different folks. It's just been those opportunities because when you're making a movie, you're just kind of in the trenches for so long together that it can be really tough,
Yeah.
and there's going to be ups and downs, and there's going to be frustrating moments, but in the end, if you're working with good people, that's going to stay through and through and help them kind of reach that next level. And that's really exciting, is that we're now starting to give opportunities to a lot of filmmakers, and that's a just beautiful, wonderful gift that we have to give. I mean, God, just this week, I just tweeted, I just said, and I knew a bunch of female writers that I wanted to work with, but I was
Oh, I
like,
know what you're talking about. Yeah.
yeah, and I was like, I'm just curious. I was like, well, I'm just curious, like who else is out there? Maybe I'll find a couple more writers that I wasn't aware of, and who would kind of pop up. And and I sent this tweet just saying, hey, I'm looking for a female writer right on this slasher. It's like super violent, twisting feminist slasher. And we had hundreds
Yeah.
of submissions. And I was like, oh my God, like this is so cool. Like just seeing. And now the problem is there's so many that I think are great that now I want to develop other projects, and I think it's just exciting to see that there are these voices that we can kind of give a platform to. And that's just really, really fun. And and again, I've got a bunch of our friends that I'm working with, and we're going to do more projects with my pals that I've known. But every now and then, I want to sprinkle in something with someone new and really give them an opportunity, and that just becomes like a special place because now that we have that privilege, I really want to try and spread it the best we can.
Awesome. And that's awesome that you're doing all these things and you're trying to give more voices to people who may not be able to get funding or, be able to do a project in an area they might be in. So, giving them that little hand and like, hey, I can help you as much as I can if you want to send me what you got going on. And this one you were just talking about, the tweet that you put out, like I'm excited to see what that comes of, because seeing all the people responding to it, I was like, wow, this is nuts. And there's so many voices out there in horror that are just itching to be heard, and I'm excited for you to be part of that and letting others show what they can do, and also what you're going to be doing with Screenbox. I'm excited because we're pretty close with Screenbox right now. We've been getting a lot of screeners from them and trying to boost them up. So whatever you do, I'm excited for.
Cool.
Alex over there, Brandon's really, really awesome. He's going to actually be helping me out with something for our listeners and viewers very, very soon that I'm excited for. So, yeah, anything that you got going on, we'll be tuning in for and checking out and reviewing, and maybe get you back on to do a little bit more deep dives or, anything like that. But it was a great talk, and I don't want to keep you too long because I know that you're still, kind of recovering. And just hearing you talk about what you got going on at Paper Street and what not Screenbox, sorry, Scare Package 2 has got going on, and all the people you're working with, and I really want to see what Luke's doing right now, because he's such an awesome guy to just kind of talk to you about anything, because his knowledge is nuts on a lot of stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah. No.
excited.
Yeah. Luke and I can deep dive on movies all night, and it's just become such a wonderful collaborative kind of effort in what we're doing together right now. And I can't wait to announce what that is. But I think safe to say what we're doing will be very much up your alley, and I think you'll be very excited about. Yeah.
Oh, I'm very,
Yeah.
very excited already. I don't even know what it is. I'm gonna be excited because
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a huge, fan of anything new, especially if it's pushing boundaries. There's a lot of people out there who like to just wait to hate on stuff, and I'm not like that. I always try to have a positive view on everything. Even if the movie's not that great, I always try to, come out with something positive with it. That's what we try to do over on this show, is we like to give, films a chance and people chances to, kind of come on here and talk about what's going on. And it was awesome having you here, Aaron, and talking about, Paper Street Pictures and everything else that's going on, and very excited for all the Shutter drops. So for everybody who is on
Yeah.
Shutter, you're in for a treat for sure.
Yeah, every month there's a new Paper Street Pictures movie dropping on Shutter, from now on. And then next year we've still got more movies coming. We've got a movie called A Creature Restoring with Chrissy Metz from This Is Us and Annalise Basso from Snowpiercer and Scout Taylor Compton from Rob Zombie's Halloween. That's a Christmas horror thing that Damien Levesque directed, who made Cleansing Hour. So that's really exciting.
Oh
Releasing
yeah,
that with Welgo. That's going to be a lot of fun. And then probably our biggest project upcoming is Shelby Oaks, which is Chris Stuckman's
yeah.
feature debut. And that's Camille Sullivan, Brandon Sexton, Keith David, Robin Bartlett. It's just a wonderful, wonderful cast. And that movie has a pretty big announcement coming pretty soon here. So yeah, we're just I feel very lucky to get to make movies. I feel very lucky to be able to talk to movies with folks like yourself, and see people who are excited about what we're doing, and that's what gives me that energy. So even when I'm feeling sick and I'm like, okay, I need to keep writing, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna keep writing because there's people who want us to keep doing this, and I'm gonna keep this train going as long as I possibly can. Because the 10-year-old me would be really, really proud, and I need to, keep that in context and remember and keep pushing. So thank you so much for having me. Thank you for taking the time to support us. And yeah, I would love to be on again and chat more in the future.
Oh yeah, awesome. And I know Dean, my co-host, he's very, very excited for Shelby Oaks. He keeps talking about it. It's like, when is that coming out? When is it coming out? I'm like, no, it's coming out soon, I think. So I know if he was here, he'd probably have some questions, but we'll wait until it gets a little bit closer and get you on and talk about that or some other stuff, because there's just so much to talk about, and especially this whole year. And I've said it numerous times. I'm going to keep saying it, but this year and even last year we've created, and you definitely took part in that, of having a horror renaissance and just like having everything just be so booming in the horror sphere. And just referencing Terrifier 2 again, seeing this super low budget film taking all of these shots and really trying to prove that it can be something, and seeing what Damien's got going on, and knowing that he's already going to be creating more Terrifiers and everything, and seeing how it's being so successful in the limited theaters that it's getting is mind blowing. And I want that to happen with everybody now who's doing it. The films that you got going on, I want to see them blow up. They kind of give the finger to all these bigger companies that like they put out all these movies that are pretty shitty, and it's like they're kind of just doing it as a cash grab. But we have folks like you who really have heart, and like you were saying, horror with heart in your company, and trying to show people that you can do something fun and meaningful in a silly genre, because horror is pretty silly if you think about it, because of the amount of stuff that you can do in it, but it can also be very, very deep and dark. And I'm so excited for the future of what you got going on.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I agree completely. And here's to continuing to grow the family and make more weird, crazy shit. That's what
Oh
it's all
yeah.
about. And but again, thank you so much. I appreciate all the kind words.
Yeah, well, thank you, Aaron, for taking the time away and getting this finally all sorted out. And I can't wait to see all your films just get all the rave and reviews that they all deserve, and to be one of the people reviewing it, and being able to talk to you. Like, this is awesome. It's what I love doing. We don't, this show is not all about money. I know a lot of podcasts out there, and they always are like, oh, my numbers are low, but we do this for the fun of it, and for you wanting to come on here and talk, it means a lot to myself and to Dean, and obviously our listeners and whatnot. So I really, really do thank you for wanting to come on and talk.
Oh, hey, look, I'm the one thanking you, buddy. What are you talking about? Like,
Yeah,
we
I
make
know.
these movies, we're just desperate to get people to cut through the chaff and understand that, I mean, I'm not making any money on Scare Package 2. Like, I'm
Yeah,
putting my own money into it, like we got a budget for it, and I personally spent my own money to make certain things better, so I didn't pay myself a dime, on that movie, and it is my baby, and it's the one that I care about so much more. So, and that's because of this industry and because of people like yourselves that support us. So thank you so much for all that support. And I can't wait for everybody to see, these next like 90 days of releases we got coming, which is going to be a lot of fun.
oh yeah. And that's pretty much it for this episode. Aaron, once again, thank you so much for taking the time away, and I really do hope you feel better. Keep drinking some tea and eating some soup and just relaxing and watching horror. And thank you for writing and powering through that and creating more stuff for us to consume, because that's all that we want to do nowadays is consume, consume, consume. And that's not a bad thing, especially when the stuff that's coming out is good.
Yeah.
There were a lot of dry spells when there wasn't a lot of good stuff coming out. There was stuff coming out, but it just wasn't that great. So we thank you, the whole horror family and whatnot. We thank you for doing what you're doing, and thank you for coming on. And for everybody listening, thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks. Cheers.